They came by boat. 5 agents in matching windbreakers, clipboards in hand, marching onto my dock like they owned it. One stepped forward, declaring I was trespassing on my own land. But what they didn't know, I had proof, history, and grit, and I wasn't about to surrender. My name's Greg, and I never thought I'd end up in a showdown with a homeowners association. I wasn't even part of one. After years in the chaos of tech startups, I cashed out and bought a dream cabin on Otterjaw Lake. Remote, quiet, and untamed. This place wasn't just property. It was my sanctuary, a gift passed down from my grandfather. Life here was blissfully simple. I woke up to loons on the water, brewed coffee on a wood stove, and spent evenings watching the sunset turn the lake gold. No board meetings, no office politics, no one to bother me. At least that's what I thought. Then came the first intrusion. A neatly folded letter, stamped with a fancy logo. Twin Pines Homeowners Alliance. First I laughed. I didn't live in Twin Pines. My cabin was on its own. But laughter quickly turned to disbelief. The letter accused me of unpermitted dock architecture. My dock, built by my grandfather in the 1940s, apparently didn't conform to community standards. Another letter followed, this one citing unauthorized chimney smoke density. They were now judging how my wood stove puffed on cold mornings. I thought it was a prank, but the letters kept coming. Each one sealed with red wax, each one signed by President Cheryl Dunst. She claimed my property fell under their jurisdiction. What really made me laugh, until it didn't, was the failure to display HOA-issued lake flag. They wanted me to fly a flag on my own cabin. I ignored every letter, tossing them into a drawer. But they didn't stop. In fact, the harassment escalated. The HOA seemed to have endless time and imagination, inventing rules that didn't exist, acting like they owned not just the water, but the air above it. I should have realized this was only the beginning. Soon, I spotted them circling my property in canoes, binoculars raised like I was some zoo exhibit. They'd call out environmental inconsistencies and scribble on clipboards. One afternoon, a drone buzzed onto my porch, blaring HOA bylaws through a tinny speaker. Section 12.4. Mandatory lawn height requirements. I didn't even have a lawn. Then came the violation notices. They left them on my truck, taped one to my boat, and, no joke, even attached one to my golden retriever when he wandered too close to their property line. That one said, unauthorized pet encroachment. And just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, they published me in their community newsletter. A whole Hall of Shame feature with photoshopped red circles around my canoe rack and compost bin. They even circled a family of ducks that liked to visit my dock, accusing me of harboring unapproved wildlife. It was absurd. It was invasive. And it was clear they weren't going to stop. That morning, I was sipping coffee when I heard the thump of a boat against my dock. 5 agents climbed out dressed like government officials. One had a laminated map. Another carried a portable printer. Their leader wore a blazer embroidered with property sovereignty enforcement. She handed me a notice. Sir, this land is under HOA reclamation. You are trespassing. I stared at her. This is my cabin. My family's land. They shuffled nervously but kept their act up. They even nailed an eviction notice to my cedar door, damaging the 100-year-old wood. That was the moment I stopped laughing. The name behind all this nonsense was clear: Cheryl Dunst, the self-proclaimed queen of Twin Pines HOA. She wanted to expand her empire, and my cabin was in her way. Could have yelled. I could have thrown them off my dock. Instead, I smiled, invited them in for coffee, and decided it was time to fight back with proof. Inside, they stood stiffly in my living room, clutching fake deeds and bogus court summons. I calmly walked to the wall safe and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside was the original 1948 deed, signed by the state governor himself. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was history. Then, I flipped open my laptop. I logged into the county's GIS system, pulling zoning maps onto my 70-inch TV. Layer by layer, the truth unfolded. This land, I said, pointing at the map, has never been under any HOA jurisdiction. In fact, it's classified as an untouchable historical homestead. That means no board, no president, no neighbor can tell me what to do here. The agents shifted uncomfortably. Their leader's face went pale. And if I wanted, I added with a grin, I could build a fireworks warehouse right here, and you couldn't say a word. I forwarded everything to the county registrar. Within hours, I had an official reply. Cheryl hadn't just targeted me. She'd submitted false documents for multiple properties. And now the authorities were involved. The tables had turned. Once the registrar confirmed the fraud, the dominoes began to fall. First, the county launched an investigation. Then the state land office sent surveyors. Even the EPA got involved after I casually mentioned they dumped printer ink into the lake while printing their fake eviction notice. But the real unraveling came when other victims spoke up. The Thompsons, an elderly couple, revealed Cheryl had tricked them with doctored maps, literally drawn in Microsoft Paint, to make them believe their home belonged to the HOA. They'd paid dues for 2 years. A young teacher named Marcus stepped forward. Cheryl had threatened to report his kayak rental business as illegal unless he joined. He had recordings of her saying, "Pay $300 a month, or I'll shut you down by Monday." It wasn't just harassment. It was a scheme. Cheryl used intimidation to push owners into selling cheap, then flipped properties through her shadow company for profit. That caught the FBI's attention. Fraud across state lines? Now it was serious. Her empire wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. Cheryl's day in court was almost surreal. She stood there in the same enforcement blazer she'd worn on my dock, insisting this was all performance art about civic boundaries. The judge didn't laugh. Evidence piled up. Forged deeds, fake judges, embezzled funds. Then came the kicker, a drone recording of Cheryl herself saying, "We'll make up whatever violations we need to force him out." Nobody refuses Cheryl Dunst's expansion vision. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even her own HOA board members looked betrayed. The verdict? 6 counts of falsification, impersonating officials, and unauthorized land claims. She was sentenced to probation, fined $50,000, and permanently banned from any HOA role. That evening, her own board held an emergency meeting. They removed her, nullified all her schemes, and issued formal apologies to every homeowner she'd bullied. They also handed her the bill for $175,000 in legal fees. Her face turned purple as she screamed about appealing to the Supreme HOA Council. Spoiler: it doesn't exist. Section 9. Resolution and Reflection, 150 words. When it was all over, peace returned to the lake. My cabin stood firm, untouched, just as my grandfather built it. Sometimes I sit on the dock, watching the sunset, thinking about how close Cheryl came to stealing everything. But I also think about what stopped her. Standing firm, knowing my rights, and refusing to be bullied. The truth is, HOAs aren't inherently evil. But when someone like Cheryl gets drunk on power, they turn from neighbors into tyrants. And tyrants count on fear to get their way. But fear doesn't win when you fight with facts. So, what would you have done if 5 fake agents stormed your dock with clipboards and threats? Would you have given in, or stood your ground? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your stories. If you enjoyed this tale of HOA madness, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more outrageous stories from entitled people and beyond. Because as long as there are power-hungry busybodies out there, I'll keep telling the stories that prove one thing. Standing your ground is always worth it.